A while back here on Amity Tracks, we did a kind of a battle royale episode, which was a lot of fun, where we pitted USA for Africa's We Are the World against Band-Aid's Do They Know It's Christmas. And they duked it out. We just had a bunch of random categories where they gained points, and then there were some points deducted, and finally a winner was declared. Now, this was a while ago, so some of you guys may have joined since we did that. So, actually, pretty proud of that video. It's kind of fun. So go back and watch that if you want, if you're interested. But we figured it was time for yet another battle royale here, and we're gonna duke it out between the 1967 Monterey Pop Festival and 1969 Woodstock Festival. What was the greatest, awesomest, most important music festival of the 60s? You might say Altamont, but no, we're not going to put Altamont in there. Woodstock versus Monterey Pop. What's it going to be? Let's see here on Amity Tracks. Hey guys, welcome to Amity Tracks. This is going to be a lot of fun. We haven't done this in a while. Woodstock versus Monterey Pop. Two iconic music festivals of the 1960s. Now, the Monterey Pop Festival, 1967, put together by John Phillips, Lou Adler, Derek Taylor, and some others. Often seen as ushering in the summer of love, the whole era, right? And then Woodstock, 1969, put together by Michael Lang, Artie Kornfeld, and others, and often seen as kind of the pinnacle of the whole flower power era, right, in the summer of 1969. So which is it? Which is the greatest? Both are 3-day festivals, so I think it's fair to compare and to pit them against each other. Now, I have chosen some completely arbitrary categories in which to score, and what we'll do is, with each category, we'll kind of compare, and I will decide which one gets the point, and we'll be adding the points as we go, and we will declare a winner at the end. So here we go. Let's do it. So the first category, most impressive list of artists. So which one has the most impressive artists? Now, in my research here, sorry, knocked the camera there. In my research here, I have Woodstock here, all the artists, Friday, Saturday, Sundays lineups, and the same here for Monterey Pop Festival. I'm not going to go through reading every artist that was there. On this one, this was close. This was close. On Woodstock, the really impressive artists for me, Richie Havens, Tim Hardin, Ravi Shankar, Arlo Guthrie, Joan Baez, Country Joe McDonald, Santana, John Sebastian, Canned Heat, Mountain, Grateful Dead, CCR, Janis Joplin, Sly and the Family Stone, The Who and Jefferson Airplane, Joe Cocker, Country Joe and the Fish, 10 Years After, The Band, Johnny Winter, Blood, Sweat and Tears, CSNY, Paul Butterfield Blues Band, and Jimi Hendrix. Those are the ones that I felt were really impressive. Real quick on Monterey Pop. Association, Lou Rawls, Eric Burden and the Animals, Simon and Garfunkel, Canned Heat, Janis Joplin, Country Joe and the Fish, Al Cooper, Butterfield Blues Band, Quicksilver Messenger Service, Steve Miller Band, Electric Flag, Moby Grape, The Byrds, Laura Nyro, Jefferson Airplane, Booker T and the MGs, Otis Redding, Ravi Shankar, Janis Joplin, Buffalo Springfield, The Who, The Grateful Dead, Jimi Hendrix Experience, and the Mamas and the Papas. Those were the really impressive ones that I found on there. So if my math is correct, just barely Woodstock ekes out that point over Monterey Pop. So Woodstock gets 1 point on most impressive artists. The second category here, legendary, amazing performances that people still talk about today. Now, this one is sort of, my judgment, right? So, some of these great artists that I listed had some pretty bad performances at these festivals, even by admission of those artists. But I'm talking about, these are performances that make the careers, broke them out, or people still discuss today. By my count, at Woodstock, Richie Havens had a pretty legendary performance. Country Joe McDonald did. Santana, of course. Sly and the Family Stone, Joe Cocker, and then naturally Jimi Hendrix playing the national anthem, right? So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. By my count, 6 like legendary in a good way. Now, some of these performances were legendary because they were kind of disasters. But I'm talking about ones that just people still talk about today as being amazing. On the Monterey pop side, Simon and Garfunkel, Janis Joplin, Otis Redding, that was huge. Ravi Shankar at Monterey, The Who, and Jimi Hendrix. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 and 6. That's a tie. So you got to give 1 point to Woodstock, 1 point to Monterey on that. So we're 2-1 so far, with Woodstock in the lead. My next totally arbitrary category, best location. Would you have rather been up where Woodstock was held in sort of upstate New York, or Monterey on the California coast? I don't know about you. I'm going the West Coast. Much more beautiful in my view than up in New York. I'm sorry. It's like the Pacific Ocean right there. I mean, beautiful, beautiful. So Monterey gets that point. 2-2 here. All right. Both festivals had pretty legendary documentary films made. I showed you here, of course, this is the Woodstock documentary. And then there was the Monterey Pop documentary. Now, I have the Criterion collection here for Monterey Pop, which has got all kinds of extras. Awesome, awesome stuff. But yeah, so I'm only including the actual Monterey Pop film that was made, because that's only fair to compare that. Now, let's see here. I forgot who actually directed. Michael Wadley directed the Woodstock film, and of course D.A. Pennebaker, yeah, directed Monterey Pop. Which, I mean, both are iconic films. I'm going to be honest with you. There are segments of both films, they go a little long, that they could have sped it up a little bit, kind of move the pace a little bit. So yeah, there's kind of some lulls in both films. I'm going to be honest with you, though. I find more lulls in Woodstock than I do Monterey Pop. I think it's a tighter film. And I don't know, just the highs of this, to me, are more electric than the highs on here. So I'm giving it to Monterey Pop. All right, so 1 point to Monterey Pop for the best of the documentaries. Okay. So, number 5, the fifth category here, I believe. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, the fifth category here. A very significant category. Which of these festivals featured the dirtiest hippies? I mean, counterculture. Woodstock's already got a little lead here on this category, because if Monterey Pop occurs in 1967 and Woodstock doesn't come along till 1969, the hippies had almost 2 more years to not bathe. But then you got to add, of course, at Woodstock, the rains and the mud. I mean, there's really no comparison. It's a runaway win for Woodstock on this category. Woodstock featured the dirtiest hippies, and that's a key factor in these festivals. So point to Woodstock on that one. Now this is interesting here. As you probably noticed when I was reading those artists, at least the ones that I thought were most impressive, um, there was some overlap. There were some artists who appeared at both festivals. And so this category is just looking at the overlapping artists. Compare their sets at Woodstock and Monterey, and at which festival did they have like the better set? And then, whichever of the festivals kind of has the most gets that point. So I gotta pull out my notes here again. Oh no, I've got it. So I did a lot of research on this. So first of all, for me, the ones that are kind of a wash, that I don't think is really strong either way, or stronger either way. Canned Heat, Ravi Shankar, Jefferson Airplane, Grateful Dead, and Paul Butterfield Blues Band. Those I think are kind of a wash. So Country Joe McDonald, I think they were better, and the Fish, they were better at Woodstock. I think they were better at Woodstock, but Jimi Hendrix, as iconic as the national anthem was, that performance at Monterey Pop, well, one, it's with the Experience at Monterey, and then at Woodstock, the Experience had already broken up, so it was just sort of this big mix of a bunch of sort of temporary people that he wasn't going to stick with. So much better band at Monterey, and as iconic as the national anthem was at Woodstock, Hendrix's set at Monterey actually broke him through here in the United States. And setting the guitar on fire. I got to give it to Monterey on that one. The Who is easy. The Who had an explosive set, literally, um, at Monterey. And even by Pete Townshend's own admission, their set at Woodstock was pretty bad. I mean, it wasn't, I don't know, bad, but it wasn't one of their best. And then Janis Joplin, I think, fine set at Woodstock, but I mean, the iconic set at Monterey, Ball and Chain, that really may have been the most electric performance of all of the whole Monterey festival, belonged to Janis, probably. So that point goes to Monterey. I think of the overlapping artists, some more of the better sets were at Monterey than at Woodstock. All right, let's see here. One more category here, but we're going to have more categories that are going to deduct points. But one more category that can gain points. And which festival featured the best released music, like soundtracks and such? Now, of course, the Woodstock soundtrack, was there 4 of them on those records? I don't own those. I've heard them. I do have this 2 CD set from Monterey Pop Festival. And I know there's other kind of more complete releases as well of that. But then you got to look at these individual artists. And while Monterey Pop has this really strange record, which on one side is Otis Redding's set, and then on the other side are excerpts from Jimi Hendrix's set, which is kind of strange. See, there's Otis and Jimmy there, even though they didn't play together at all. And then, of course, I have this, which is Jimi Hendrix's complete set at Monterey, which is just, groundbreaking, just amazing. It's so great, so great. Even with the wild thing at the end where he's setting his guitar on fire, it's all there. It's all there. Even with those, you got to look at Woodstock. So many artists have released their sets from Woodstock. I made a list here. This is what I think is complete. Mountain, Santana, Sly and the Family Stone, Jefferson Airplane, Creedence Clearwater Revival, Hendrix, Janis Joplin, Tim Hardin, Johnny Winter, and Joe Cocker. That I don't own all those, but from my research, all those artists have released their sets, commercially, their Woodstock sets. So I got to give that point to Woodstock. It's just by volume alone, I think Woodstock gets that point. So here we are. We are tied at 4-4, if my math is good. And my math, I hate math. I had editor cut in and out because I actually was having trouble counting up to 4 and 4, but I got it. So we are tied, in fact. Monterey Pop has 4 points. Woodstock has 4 points. But wait, we have some more categories, but these categories are going to deduct points. So let's see here. This is an interesting category. Most impressive no-shows. So each festival had a list, as a rather lengthy lists of artists who were invited but declined the invitation, or who even agreed but then didn't show, or some that were trying to get there but couldn't get there for logistical reasons or whatever. Now, so on this one, whichever one has the most impressive list of no-shows will lose a point because they didn't show up, right? So, yeah, okay. So on the Monterey Pop side, the Beach Boys. Now, apparently, Brian Wilson, I know some people in the Beach Boys camp were actually involved in trying to kind of set up Monterey Pop with some of these other guys. But the Beach Boys, from what I remember reading, canceled. Honestly, I think that they weren't in great shape at that point, and they were kind of intimidated. They didn't actually kind of intimidated by some of the other artists on the bill. Donovan was supposed to show up, but he had visa issues getting into the United States, so he didn't show up. The Kinks, that would have been awesome, but they thought they were, the Kinks had a lot of issues getting into the United States and playing because they had a huge in the '60s because they had a huge dispute with the musicians unions and all that. So they still thought they were going to have trouble getting in, so they declined. Love and Spoonful declined, and Dionne Warwick declined. But Woodstock. This is the list of Woodstock. This is pretty impressive. John Lennon. They were trying to get John. Now they wanted the Beatles, but of course, by the time Woodstock, the Beatles were in shambles. But they did try and get John Lennon to come, but he, kind of like Donovan with Monterey, he had visa issues getting in the United States because the Nixon administration was upset with Lennon for being so vocal about his anti-war sentiments. The Jeff Beck group, they were set to play. Their name was even listed on the posters that were created, but then they broke up right before Woodstock happened, so they were a no-show because they broke up. Let's see. The Byrds declined. Chicago had a conflict, so they couldn't come. The Doors canceled. They were supposed to be there. Free declined. The Guess Who declined. Iron Butterfly missed their flight, so they didn't make it. Tommy James declined. Jethro Tull declined. Led Zeppelin declined. Love declined. Joni Mitchell had a conflict, so she didn't do Woodstock, but did the other show. The Moody Blues declined. Poco declined. The Rascals declined. The Rolling Stones declined. Simon and Garfunkel declined. Spirit declined. The Strawberry Alarm Clock declined. Frank Zappa declined. And Roy Rogers, who they wanted to get to close Woodstock by singing Happy Trails, declined. I think it's pretty easy to tell there. Woodstock takes the cake there on no shows, but that's a negative thing. So -1 point for that. Okay. Next, let's see the next deduction. The most filler artists. Now, we went over what I thought were the most impressive artists at each festival. But to me, there is some filler. And so whichever festival had the most filler, I'm going to deduct a point as well. I'm not going to go through all these names, but just trust me. You may disagree. I went through all the lineups here again. There's Woodstock, there's Monterey. To me, there was more filler at Woodstock, so minus a point there as well. Finally, the last category, the last deduction category, the most embarrassing political diatribe from the stage. Now, I picked I picked sort of the most embarrassing one for each festival. Okay, so the representative from Woodstock is going to be Abby Hoffman, who went up before the Who's set, and this is this great moment when Pete Townsend just yells at Abby Hoffman to shut up and get off this. In fact, Pete Townsend's words were, "Get the F off my stage." And then the Who come on and start their set. Now, on the Monterey Pop side, we got to give it to David Crosby when he goes off on his conspiracy theories on the Kennedy assassination and, the cover up and, the man this and the man that and all that. I'm going to go with Crosby because, I love David Crosby. He, rest in peace, died earlier this year. But man, when he starts going off, he can be so maddening, And in fact, uh, supposedly one of the several reasons that Crosby got booted from the Byrds was because the rest of the Byrds were so irritated with him for his political speeches at Monterey Pop. So, yeah, I'm giving that to Monterey Pop, but again, it's a deduction, so minus a point there. So now with these deductions, the final tally, according to my math, is Monterey Pop 3, Woodstock 2. Therefore, the Monterey Pop Festival is the greatest music festival of the 1960s, according to this very scientific battle royale that we've had here. All right, guys, that was a lot of fun. I mean, this is all tongue-in-cheek. I mean, obviously, both are iconic. Love all these artists, but, it's fun to do that. So in the comments, what do you think? Did I get it right? Did I get it wrong? What categories would you have considered? What do you think is the greatest music festival of the 60s? Anyway, please do subscribe to the channel if you enjoy our content. It really helps us do what we want to do. Hit the bell for notifications, for whenever we put up new material. And like the videos, all that great stuff really helps us out. And we'll see you next time.